Hey, Be'ez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah daf Samach Aleph, 61. Let me use this one here. 61, and I'm just going to start from Samach Beis, Samach Amid Beis. So, just to, it's easy stuff, but the Mishnah said, the Mishnah said that if, right over here, that we know to make a goy to make a wine usser, a Jewish wine usser, he has to stick his hand in there and stir it. And for the sake of stirring it, then he makes the wine usser v'hana. But the Mishnah says if the goy had a reason to stick his hand into the wine, to stick his finger into the wine with a stick, let's say, because he was measuring how much wine, or he was trying to, knock the bubbles down, or to chase away a hornet. So let's say he did that. So you can understand that he didn't stir the wine for the sake of stirring the wine. He had a reason what he was doing. So then the Mishnah says that it's also to drink that wine, but it's mutter to benefit from that wine. You can sell that wine. Reb Shimon says no, it's mutter to even drink that wine. So now the Gemara just says that Omar Rav Ada Barahava Yenuchalai Rav Shimon Brachas al Rashai. Let's put blessings on Rav Shimon's head. Kshu mater, whenever he goes lenient, matir afilu b'shtiya. He maters even to drink. Kshu oiser, but when he says the wine is aser, oiser afilu b'hana, he says it's aser to even benefit from that wine. So basically, what Rabbi Shimon has no in between, like we saw. Rabbi Shimon has no in between type of opinion. His opinion is always that it's mutter to drink or asr bahana. It's no such a thing of it's mutter bahana but asr to drink. So the Gemara continues and says, Amar Chiva Abba Machmeni Amar Chizda Amar Ava Amar Lam Rav Chizda Maziri Halacha Rab Shimon. The halacha is like Rab Shimon. Ikediami Amar Rav Chizda Amar Li Abba Bachana Halacha Maziri Halacha Rab Shimon. But the Gemara concludes, Ve'ein Halacha Rab Shimon. Hi, Lewis. We just began. We're on Samach Amid Beis. Now, the Mishnah says, not al chavius. A goy takes a barrel, okay? It was rakai bechamosai in his temper. He took the barrel and threw it into the Jewish wine pit. The Jew has wine in his pit. And what do you do with that? So they said that the wine is okay. The wine is kosher. Because, no, we don't really understand that. The wine was kosher because even though the wine got stirred, but the guy wasn't holding on to the item, to the barrel as it entered the wine. He threw it out of his hand and it landed into the wine pit, so that's not usher. Rav Ashi says, he makes a statement. Kol shebazav tamei begoy oisiyayin. If wherever a person could become tamei by a zav, that would be the same thing by yayin nesach. For example, a person that touches a zav, then he becomes tamei, right? A tar person touches zav, he becomes tamei. If he takes a stick and touches a zav, he also becomes tamei because he's touching the zav through the stick. So same thing. If a goy touches yayin nesach even through a stick and stirs it, so then the yayin nesach is asa. Kol shebezav tar, but if a zav, you wouldn't become tamei by the zav. For example, let's say the zav threw a ball at you and it hit you. So then you would be tar. The goy ain't oisi yayin nesach. If the goy would do the same thing and throw a ball into the wine, so then the yain would not become yain nesach. That's what Rav Ashi said. So the Gemara says, Eisvei, because our Mishnah agrees with that, but it says it's Eis Rav Huna Rav Ashi. Not if the guy took a barrel and threw it with his anger, that's the key word. He threw it with his anger into the bar. This was a story in the city of Beit Sha'an. They made it kosher. Only because the guy threw it in his anger. So he really had no intention of getting the barrel into the pit. Pardon me. But let's say he knew he wasn't angry. He just took the barrel and wanted the barrel to land into the wine. Lie. Then we would say that it's not kosher, that it is yayin esach. But you just told me, Rav Ashi, that that in such a case, If the guy threw a ball, let's say, into the wine pit, it wouldn't make it yayin esach. And our Mishnah seems to say it would. If that was his intention to throw a ball into the bar, it would become yayin esach. And says the Gemara, Hasam, really, if the guy threw a ball or the barrel and he was far away from the pit, it would not become yayin esach. Here is the ka'azal minei minei. He was rolling the barrel right near the pit and then pushed it into the pit. So that there, if he was angry, we say it's kosher. The wine is kosher. But if he, because then, but if he was not angry, then maybe he, in his calmness, he pushed the barrel into the wine pit and then touched the wine. We're afraid that maybe he touched. When he's angry, a person just get rid of this barrel. So we don't afraid that he touched the pit because even though he was so close to the pit, but when he's not angry, we are afraid that maybe he actually touched the wine in the pit, and that's why it would not be kosher if he wasn't angry. However, if a guy is far away from a pit of wine and just on his own picks up, not anger, throws the something into the pit, the wine will not become yayin esach. Now we go into today's page, Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. Okay, here we go. The Mishnah begins and says, now Goyim owned the wine, right? Goyim maybe could afford to have a wine press and all that. So what happens, like an OU, a Yid wants to borrow the Goy's grapes and wine press. He was kashered it, and now he wants to make wine, but he doesn't, and to make kosher wine, and then sell it to Jews, and then pay the Goy for his wine. So the Jew will make a profit, and the Goy, has his wine press in use. The question is, as long as you don't pay money for the wine, the Goy really it's his wine. I mean, the Jew didn't pay for it yet. So the Mishnah says, Hamataya Yaine Shel Goy. A Jew wants to make kosher Goyish wine. So he finished the wine product and now places the wine and he puts the wine in the domain of the Goy. Let's say the Goy had a storage house and he leaves it there. Now, we're going to learn that in order to leave it there, since you didn't pay for the wine will not be kosher because the Goy could always walk in and just, scoop up the wine. So you have to put it in his house, in his let's say, his storehouse, but you have to make sure the Goy doesn't have the key to the storehouse. Plus, you have to put a seal on the wine. And in that case, and then the house has to be open to Rosh Hashanah. So now, in order for the Goy to get into that storehouse, he has to break the lock and then start fiddling around with the seal on the barrel of wine. So then the guy's not going to do it because his house is open to Rosh Hashanah. People are walking by, and we're talking about Be'ir Sheyesh Bo Goyim v'Yisraelim. There's a lot of Jews and Goyim. So in that case, mutter, then the wine remains mutter, because if the guy would want to do that, well, he's going to have other Jews walk by and say, "Wait a second, you're not supposed. Why is this guy fiddling around with this wine? Why is the guy fiddling around with this wine?" So that's why it is permitted. Be'ir shekula goyim, but let's say it's a city full of goyim, even if the Yid put a lock on the storehouse, even if he has a seal on the barrel, also the wine will be asur. Why? Because the Jew didn't pay for the wine. So the guy always feels he has a right to break into his own storehouse and play around with the wine. The only way it will be kosher until you put up a shomer. If you put up a mashgiach, then it's good. The shomer doesn't have to be there all the time. The mashgiach, as long as he goes in and out periodically. So then the guy never knows when the shomer is there, so he's not going to break for the wine. Now the Mishnah said that the guy, you put it into the guy who gave you the grapes, right? That guy's house, that guy's storehouse. Let's say you took the wine and put it into another guy's house. So it would seem in that case it would be mutter, because even in a city of Kulei Goyim, it would be mutter, because one guy is not going to allow another guy into his house. But Reb Shimon ben Elazar Reshus Goyim achas he. All the goyim, it doesn't matter where you store the wine. The wine will be as you would need to have a shomer there. Okay, so again, we're talking about the same case again. Hamatar Yenish Goy. A guy goes and wants to make a hechsher for, he makes a hechsher on goyish wine, right? He uses the goyish grapes and the goy, and he does everything kosher, but he didn't pay for it yet. The nice number and he stores it in the goy's house. But here's an additional issue. And the person wrote, his kabalti min chamoyes. I look at it as if you paid for the wine. So the guy is like agreeing that he's never going to, take the wine. Mutter, then it's mutter the wine, because the guy agreed that he's not going to mess with the wine. And particularly if you have the key where the wine is stored, the Jew has the key, and also there's a seal on the wine. But what happens, Evelyn, if at one time the Jew wanted to take the wine, the Eina Menich and the guy says, I'm not letting you have this wine until you give me the money. So then we see that the guy is holding that this wine is his. So this was a story in Beit Sha'an, Va'asru, and they aser that wine because we see that the guy still considers it his wine. Says the Gemara, we said that if there is, again, Goy is holding on to the Jewish wine. The Jew was machshir, the wine that was made from the Goyim's grapes, with the hope to resell it to other Jews and then pay the Goy back. So the Mishnah said that if this happened in a city that everybody's a Goy, most people are Goyim, so then the Goy is not afraid to go back and break into the storehouse and start playing around with the wine, because he says the Jew never paid me for this wine, so it's my wine. So what do you mean? Even if a city is full of goyim, but aren't there Jewish peddlers that go into cities and sell items? So there's always a Jew around. There's no such a city that's Hulay Goyim, that there's only Goyim. There's always Jews coming in and out of the city. Shmuel says, Be'ir sheyesh lechem d'sayim v'riach. Talking about a city that has a lock and a key, and normally the gates of the city are locked. And when the gates open, everybody knows that they're letting people in. So in that case, the guy knows that they're letting peddlers in, so therefore he'll be careful not to do anything in front of the peddlers. So therefore, because of that, in a city that's kulay goyim, then we assume that the guy on his own time, when there's no peddlers there in the city, he's going to play around with the wine because he's not afraid of anybody, because there's only goyim normally living in that town. Amar Rav Yosef said, we said that in addition to everything, if the guy is storing the wine, if you're storing the wine in the goyish storehouse, it has to be open to the Rosh Hashanah, so Jewish people who pass by could peek in to see what's doing into the storehouse. Even if it's not facing the Rosh Hashanah, even if the storehouse is facing a window of another Jew, so another Jew could always look out of his window and see what's going on in the guy's storehouse. That's like a Rosh Hashanah. That's makes it kosher. If there is a dump there, that people could climb up on the dump and take a look what's doing in the goyish house, that's like the Rosh Hashanah. That also would make the guy scared to do anything. V'dikla Rosh Hashanah dami. And if you have a tree where it's easy to climb up this tree, a palm tree, and then look into the goyish house, to see he's not messing around with the wine, that's also a way to make the wine kosher. Says the Gemara, psik reisha, but let's say the tree has no fruits on it, right? So there's no reason why a person would climb the tree. One would say that, of course, then the wine is usher, because nobody's going to climb the tree to look into the house to see if the guy's doing anything, so he's not afraid. And one says it's mutter. Manda asa, because lamalei the salakaso. Why would a Jew climb a tree if there's no fruits there? So the guy, knowing that no Jew is going to climb the tree, is not afraid to do anything with the wine in the house. Uman deshari, but one that says it's mutter, yes, zimnim the of the lebehema. Sometime a Jew lost an animal, v'salik layuni basra, and he climbs the tree to see maybe where the animal went. So there's reasons that a Jew would use that tree to climb up and look around. And since that tree has perfect view to what's going on into the guy's house, into the guy's storehouse, therefore the guy is afraid to do anything with that wine. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. A Jew bought a house, right? You buy a house and you filled it up with Jewish wine, and the door is open, right? The door is open to your house. You don't even have a lock on the house. But the courtyard belongs to a guy. So the guy could walk into the courtyard and probably enter your house. But Yisrael, Darbai Sechatze, but there's Jews living in that courtyard. They can see if the guy is going to go into your house. So therefore, it's mutter. It's mutter. Even though you didn't lock up the wine, because the guy has, even if you left the door to your house open and you didn't seal the wine is kosher. Why? Because the guy has no reason to be into your house. You don't owe him any money. So therefore, the wine is kosher. We go to Amid Beis. Bechotzer acheres mutter. Even if a Jew lives in another courtyard, not this courtyard, the wine would be mutter. The guy could walk in on his own into the house. The answer is if there is a lock on the door of the house, plus the wine has a seal, then the wine is mutter because it's too much of a bother for the guy to pick the lock, get into your house, undo the seal for your wine, and then reseal it. So he's not going to do it. Now the Brisa does exactly what our Mishnah is. A guy goes over to a guy and says, "Listen, I'm borrowing your grapes and I'm going to make kosher wine and I'm going to sell it to Jews and make a profit and pay you back. However, after the wine is finished, until I'm ready to sell it to Jews, I'm storing it in your domain, your storehouse." So now, Hamataher Yena Shel Goy B'Rishusai, he makes kosher the wine of a guy and he leaves it in the guy's rishus. The Yisrael Dar Ba'isachatze, and there's another Jew in that courtyard, so he can see if the owner of the grapes is going to play around with that wine. So mutter, it's mutter. The mafteach and the chaysim biyadai, in other words, the key and the seal, the wine is sealed, is by the person that made the wine, the Jew that made the wine. Since there's another Jew living in that chotzer, he's going to watch to see if the owner of the guy is going to come to his storehouse and start playing around with the wine that's supposed to be sold to Jews. Amalei Rab Chana Latana Tni. Rab Chana said to this person that brought the brisa, you have to change the brisa. Even if the Jew did not have a key or a lock on the door, or the wine was sealed, the wine is mutter if there's another person living in that chotzer. Now the Jew, because he's like a shomer, and we said that a shomer is better than anything. A shomer could always just walk in and out anytime, so the guy is scared to do anything. But if the Jew lives in another courtyard, so he can't watch what's going on, also the wine is also even though the mafteach and the chaysim, even though the door is locked and the wine is sealed, the wine will be aser. Why divrei meir? Because it's simple. Because the Yid didn't pay for the wine yet, so the guy looks at it. Hey, this is wine. The Jew made the wine, but still he never paid for it, so it's my wine, and therefore I can do whatever I want. The Chachamim say it's aser ache shomer yoshev mishama ache yavi memunim ba'abal lekitzim. Chachamim say it's aser, and because you need a shomer. Until there's a shomer, the wine will be aser. Or you have a shomer that says when he's coming. So we'll just understand what the Chachamim is saying. The Chachamim is saying that it's aser. Well, that's exactly what Rav Meir said. Rav Meir said that it's always aser because the guy could always come into his own storehouse and say, hey, it's my wine. So he's not afraid to do anything. So the Gemara's question is, Chachamim Ahaya, what is the Chachamim Aser? Ilay Maseifa, it's they're going on the Seifa where there's another Jew living in a Chatzar Cheres or whatever, but the Goy feels like he could go into his own storehouse. Tanakama Nami Mesa Aser. Chachamim says it's Aser, so therefore the Chachamim say it's Aser. So they're not arguing. Vel Aresha to say are they going in the first case in the Mishnah, where what's the first case in the Mishnah? That there's another Jew living right directly across from where the guy lives, and he could always look into the guy's house. The Tanakama says that it's totally permitted, even though the house is not locked. Since there's another Jew watching, that's great. So how could the Chacham say it would be Asr? If you have a Shomer there, so there's another Jew there, that's like having a Shomer. So why would the Chacham say it's Asr? Ella Sefer Deresh. It's going on the second case. The Kama Tama Kamar. The Tanakama says, B'chotzer acheretz muter v'hu shemavteach v'chaysim biyadai. If the Jew lives in another chotzer, again, if the Jew lives in another chotzer, but it's Jewish wine, it's not the wine belonging to a guy. It's not the wine belonging to a guy. The guy never has business to be there, and the Jew lives in another chotzer. So let's say a Yid bought a house, and he fills it up with his own wine. It's in the Jew's house. There's no reason why, and there's no reason why the guy should be in that house. So the only way the wine is mutter is if the Jew locked up the house, then the wine is good. The Chachamim says no. La'olam asa, it's always asa ad sheyishayim yoshim shama oy ad sheyavei mamuna habal lekitzin, until you have a police officer there. Otherwise, the wine is awesome. Now, you could argue and say, you have a house, it's your wine, Jew's wine. He didn't make it from the guys. The Jew is not there. He locked up the house and he put a seal on the wine. Just he happens to live somewhere else. The wine is aser, according to the Chachamim, because the guy feels, since there's no Jew in the Chatzir, he feels free to break into the Jew's house and play around with his wine, until you have a video camera or somebody watching who comes at set intervals. Then the guy is not going to do it, not going to do anything. Says the Gemara, Mamuna Habal Kitzim, Rishus Greyasehi. If with just the language doesn't make sense. If you have a police officer that comes around at set times, so then the guy knows when he's coming around, and so he'll be careful not to do anything during those set times. But in other times, he feels safe to do whatever he wants. Ella we're talking about. You're right. You have to change it to a police officer that doesn't have set route, and therefore only then would the wine be kosher. Then Rav Shimon Lazar Mereshus Goyim Achazi. We're going back to the Mishnah that said you use the goy's grapes to make wine. So if you store it in the owner of those grapes, the goy's house, then it's aser. But what happens if you don't store it in his house? You store it in another person's house. So we don't know who said what, but basically you could always be concerned that even if you store it in another guy's house, he's going to allow the owner of those grapes, the first guy, to come into his house and play around with the wine, so that one day when he's going to need help, in another situation, the owner of the grapes will allow the person that you store the wine by come into his house. So we don't know who was machmir and who was mekel. Rab Shimon ben Elazar lahakel or lahachmir. Rab Shimon ben Elazar made it easier or harder. Rav Yehuda Amaziri lahakel. Rav Nachman Amaziri lahachmir. Yehuda Amaziri lahakel. Rav Yehuda said that Ziri was explained that Rab Shimon is coming to make it lighter. Hachikama Tanakama. This is how you read the Tanakama. Kishem shebeshus yasa. Just like you're not allowed to store the wine in the goy's rishus. Kach b'rishus goy achanami asa, to store it in another guy's rishus, it's also asa. V'chashin and legoimlim. We're chayish, concerned that maybe they're friends, and the guy that owns the wine, so to speak, because it wasn't yet paid for, will come into the other guy's house and mess around with the wine. And so that because one day the roles will be reversed, and this guy is going to need the other guy, so that guy is going to let him come in. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar, I'm Bemed v'Amar B'Shusay, Abishus Goy Acha Mutav Lo Chashin L'Goyim Lehem. So Reb Shimon ben Elazar is coming to make it easier. That if you store the wine in some other guy's rishus, not the guy that gave you the grapes, then the wine would be mutter, and not concerned that they're in cahoots. Rab Nachman Amazin lahachmir. Rab Nachman Ziri said that Reb Shimon meant to say severe. V'achi kama b'med devarim mum b'shusay. Al b'shus goyin acham mutter. The Chachamim say that it's mutter. V'leicha shinin l'goyimim. Reb Shimon ben Elazar oimer kol shus goyim achas hi. Tanya kavos Rab Nachman Amaziri lahachmir. Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar kol rishus goyim achas hi mipnei haramoim. So basically, what you see from here is Reb Shimon ben Elazar went strict, and he said that you not only would the wine be also if you stored it in the guy who owns the grapes, who let you use the grapes, his grapes, if you store it in his rishus, even if you stored it in somebody else's rishus, it would also be aser because we're afraid that they're in cahoots with each other, and therefore they'll let each other come into the house to play around with the wine. Says the Gemara, two stories, and that ends the parak. The Bei Parza Rafila, I see the Chabe Gabri Yasayu. This Bei Parza, it was a goy, and he put the guy, a Jew koshered his wine, and he put the Jew's kosher wine by his employee. That's Savar Rabbanon Kamei de Rav Lamema, that it's kosher. Why? Ki chashin l'goyim. When you chayish that they're in cahoots with each other, when there's a possibility that each one would use each other to do favors for. Let's say the Parza la Rafila would use his employee as a favor, and the employee, when he needs a favor, will go to his boss. But that's not always the case. Since the employee will never ask his boss for a favor, we're not cautious for they're in cahoots with each other, and therefore the employee is not going to allow his boss to come into the property to touch the wine. That's what the Rabbanon felt. But Amalu Rava says Adarab, just the opposite. Over here is a little different because it's an employee, basically. An employee is going to be scared not to allow his boss to come in. So if the employee is holding on to the wine, he's going to allow his boss to come in to play with the wine. So therefore, no matter what you hold, this wine will be aser. Concludes the Gemara. Ha'uk Karacha, there was this city, the Haviyasa Bechamer the Yisrael, that there was wine, there was Jewish wine in the city. I don't know exactly, let's say in a public, wine house. Ishtakach goy davakoi beini de beini, and we find a guy walking around amongst the barrels. So we're afraid maybe the guy popped open a barrel and stuck his hand in there. Amarava, it depends what type of city it is. In Nitvas Olav Kaganav, if this guy would be afraid to be caught playing around with the wine because there's justice in that city, then Chamar Shari, then the wine would be mutter because he would be afraid to do something because he's afraid to get caught. V'loi, but if it's like a progressive city where you don't pay for anything, you can do whatever you want, then also the guy is not afraid, so then the wine would be also. Hadron Allah, Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, stop right here.
Thank you so much.